all these excuses of all the reasons that, and everyone I think that's human condition. Your body explains to you why you shouldn't really, go out and make yourself work so hard. And I just remember staring out in the driveway and just and I had no reason to run. I wasn't training for anything. But I just wanted to, like, I felt compelled to, and I went on just a maybe 1 or 2 mile run. I don't even know how far I ran, but I just went out for this jog and came back. And I remember my dad was cooking lunch and just was like, what'd you run for? It's cold. It's starting to snow. It's slippery and getting icy probably. And I just felt like I had to go run. And at that time I was also lucky. I wasn't, that's the thing. I wasn't training for anything that I knew of, but I do feel like looking back at that this terrible thing was happening and I was in the best shape of my life. I really was. And the nurses, the doctors said, that really helped me get through all the trauma. But in any case, we had a pretty normal Christmas Eve, just being at the house, and we were planning to go in the mid-afternoon over to my second cousin's house and spend Christmas Eve with them, which is a typical Christmas Eve. But it all we drove back. We left the party and we were driving back to go to church. I believe 9 or 10 o'clock. We were going to go to this midnight mass, so called, and that was my aunt's church, and watch my uncle and aunt sing in the choir. But on our way there, 90-year-old man ran a stop sign and hit our car. And I still remember that moment vividly, but then just black, just nothing. And I remember when I came to, and I don't even know how long that was, but when I came to, I had, shortly thereafter, I could hear people talking outside, but I remember I was laying on the passenger window on the passenger side. And I remember someone coming up to the driver's window and looking down at me and basically just telling me to remain calm and all those sorts of things. But he warned me that when I came out, I'd feel the most pain I've ever felt in my life. And I had no idea what he was talking about. I mean, I was in shock. I couldn't feel my legs in that moment, but I didn't really think about it. I couldn't move I didn't think anything of it. I think I might have even told him that. And so he probably knew what that meant, but I didn't know what that meant. I just thought, like, I still didn't know what was going on. And, but he was right. I mean, when they pulled me out, it was the most pain I've ever felt in my life, and since or before. And I was taken to the hospital. It was a blur. I remember counting down. I'd never had a surgery, but I remember counting down from 10 and going under at about 8. And then by the time in my mind I would have gotten down to 0, I woke up again. 8.5 hours had passed. And,
wow.
And they had worked on my back that entire time, replacing 2 vertebrae. And it was some short time thereafter that the doctor came in to tell me that I had to have a surgery on my back and all those things. And then laid it on me that I'd never walk again, that even a 1% chance would be more credit than she would want to give me, but that's what it is. And and that's at some point during that time, I know in between the accident and the surgery, I had a trooper come to tell me that my father had passed, but I didn't really. I felt it, but I didn't believe it necessarily. I mean, all of it felt like it was a nightmare, like none of it was real. And I was waiting to wake up, and I didn't get much sleep, obviously, at the hospital. But when I did and I woke up, every single time was like a new realization that, like, I'm waking up again and I'm in a hospital bed. What happened? And I basically had to, like, relive it all over and over again, because every time I woke up, I was somewhat in shock that, like, this is my life now. This isn't going away. But that changed everything for us as a family and for me, obviously. I went through as I said, it was about 3.5 months in the hospital. And when I finally did get home, I think there was a lot of soul searching. And when I got back to my house, I couldn't go to my room because I was still in my wheelchair. At that point, I think I had enough medication that my legs finally, I didn't feel anything for a while, but when I did, I would have just painful sensations, painful burning. And the medication got to where I couldn't feel anything. So, but when I got home, I realized that, this was all real. Like, this is my house and it's empty, no one's here. And I know there was a big part of me that was waiting to come home, and maybe that would be this inception point where finally I'd wake up in my room and it was all a nightmare. But that didn't happen. So there was a lot of figuring things out, especially the first year of trying to realize and comprehend everything that had happened and what that meant for my future.
Yeah. So when the comment was made about 1% chance or less than a 1% chance, really a 1% chance of walking again, do you recall what your initial thoughts and emotions were to that comment?
I mean, I think it was the same as the other things that they told me had happened, but I just remember saying no, like, no, that's not, like, you're wrong, basically. And really not necessarily that you're wrong, I won't walk again, but you're just, like, you're confusing me with someone else. Like, you didn't do that surgery. That didn't happen.
This isn't real. Like, yeah.
Basically going through those stages of grief that I just denied everything that wasn't real. I mean, even in that first day, as I was processing things, though, it was like, okay. I mean, I couldn't hardly move, like even turn or anything in bed. And I'm like, okay, so I did have this surgery. Like, that's a real thing. And I would still tell myself, though, that she's still, like, I'll get through this. And it wasn't quite that easy, but it was, I'm going to get through this. I'm not going to be like everyone else. Like, I'm going to overcome this. And she doesn't know me. She doesn't know how I am. But usually by nighttime, I'd set back in like that. And not that they were, all negative, but they knew the reality I was facing and what a challenge it would be. And so by nighttime, usually things would settle in that, like, this is your life now. Like, it's going to be awful all the time, and you're going to be in physical pain, and you're going to be in emotional pain, and this is just what life is now. And usually around those times is when I would say my prayers, and just, if anything could go right, if anything positive could ever come from this, then it would kind of renew the faith I had, because just everything was terrible. And so I would start my mornings again. Okay, I'm going to overcome this. And I really had hoped for that miraculous moment that, boom, I just wake up and none of it had happened. But I also hoped that I'd wake up and just forget what had happened, and I would just get out of bed and just walk home. And of course that didn't happen either. So it was a constant tug back and forth as far as getting to nighttime and like I said, usually not sleeping a wink and just thinking, this is my life now. This is what it's going to be. And then the next morning having to reset and eventually get to the mode at the University of Michigan that I'm going to go do my physical therapy, do what they tell me to do, give it my best, and, just make it through another day and really take it day by day. That was, I think, when I really started to regain, which I think I naturally had a positive, optimistic attitude, like just my personality, but I kind of regained that again. Instead of just saying no and you got the wrong guy and that kind of thing, I just said, well, I'm going to do the things they tell me to do and get the most out of every day that I can. And hopefully that adds up to something of value.
So, daily you were dealing with the mental and emotional, right, aspects of this and the struggle and hoping maybe you just wake up and it's everything's back to normal, right? They're just kind of living this dream and this nightmare. That's a lot that you were trying to cope with, and then your family was coping with due to the tragedy and obviously you being in the hospital and having these surgeries. How was that support from them for you? And being there, and I'm sorry, everyone's dealing with their own thing, right? Like you said, the loss of your father, the loss of your beloved ones, and then so help me a little understand about the support aspect there.
It was huge. I think that for each of us, I think we each just were strong in our own way as far as bearing, that weight that we had. I mean, even for me, I would never make it out as bad as it actually was. Even a nurse asking me what's my pain on the pain scale, I might say a 4 or 5, but in my mind, it's really a 7 or 8 if my mom was sitting with. And I think the same way for my mom, she's trying to be strong for all of us. And again, I go back to that, comparing to things, but, her dealing with her loss, probably in a lot of ways is a stronger burden to bear than, even for any of us. I mean, again, losing your father is not by any means, an easy thing. I mean, it's, again, a huge, terrible thing, but for my mom, that's someone she's, been with as long as I've been alive, and someone that's been with her. And then as well for my brother, and what he was dealing with, the loss. And then of course for me, I'm dealing with learning how to live life in a wheelchair and the loss of my legs. And they're all different forms of loss, but certainly the biggest challenge, as hard as it was going through physical therapy and those things, dealing with that loss was by far, the most challenging for any of us. And so I did have the support. I was fortunate enough for my brother. He graduated high school early after all this happened and went to Michigan to start a new season of life. And so I did get to see him more often at the hospital, to spend time with him. My older brother was at the hospital nearly every day. And meanwhile, he was driving back and running the family business that, even with this accident happening, had to continue on. So he was working double shift effectively, working through normal business hours and then coming to Toledo to be at the hospital in the evenings with me. And so that kept me going. I mean, I think in a lot of ways kept me from breaking down, because I really, I saw a lot of people at the hospital that did not have that support system. And I saw some people even that had support, and by the time they left the hospital, that support was no longer there. They didn't want anything to do with the challenges they were about to face, and that was heartbreaking to see as well. But it also reminded me of how fortunate I was to have that. And in addition to that, the whole community of Northwest Ohio and even beyond in Michigan and in Ohio, I had just little things. I had 2 referees that from when I played basketball in high school that visited, and they read my care page about how I love Frosted Flakes. I had an obsession with Frosted Flakes, and they brought me this Kellogg's gift thing of little trinkets, that in and of themselves weren't that valuable, but meant a lot to me to get that. And a lot of classmates that, or even friends that were now teachers that, I had a big banner in my hospital room up on the wall with all the students giving me encouragement. But I mean, it really does mean a lot, because most of the time it was, whether it was at lunch when I'm in my room or throughout the night when I'm just laying there, that's what I'm looking at. I'm either looking at a blank wall or a big banner of some kids, and some that try to draw a smiley face or a horse, picture, and just get a little bit of encouragement from that. From somewhere, there's some kid that, took the time to say, I want this guy to feel better, even though he didn't know who I was, but he read about me or maybe knew me or maybe his parents knew me, but that would kind of give me that smile. And I look back on those days and wonder like how I got through that. And deep down, I know how I got through that, but I have people say that I don't think I could have gotten through that. And I said, I know the feeling, because I don't think I could have either, other than all those different things that came together, including that support and the prayers. I mean, people really, again, in hindsight, I look back and I see all those moments. And as I was journaling about my book, then I see those pieces come together and really see how I did get through that.
Yeah, to have that support and encouragement, not only that from your family, your loved ones, your friends, but then complete strangers, right? I mean, that's amazing.
Well, and I had a friend, Katie, that came up from Ohio State and brought me a gift from the president, Gordon Gee at the time, and he had sent me a present, and it was an Ohio State University shirt. And I said, "Does he want me to get better or not?" He knows I'm in Ann Arbor, and I got to see him when I did graduate, and it was funny because he knew. He knew my brother went to Michigan, and I had this picture of him like holding up this fist, like, "Hey, you got to cheer for Ohio State." And he was a great guy, but one of many. That's what was so cool is I had almost competing with Ohio State and Michigan of getting support. And I remember being in the basement where physical therapy was and getting a phone call, and it was always exciting. Like, oh, someone wants to call me, and I remember answering the phone and having someone tell me that, "Hi, this is Coach Trestle. Is this Brock Mueller?" And I kind of chuckled because I was like, "Okay, who is this? Like,
who's messing with me?"
Yeah, which one of my buddies? And I had a few names pop up, but as I listened to him, I'm like, "This is no, that's really good impression." But I mean, it was such a cool thing. Obviously, Elliot's coach, Rich Rodriguez, came to the hospital and visited me, but I don't think there's very many people, and except for a high school recruit that gets that call, from those two coaches in the same week, and it did. It was a real blessing, and it's one of those things that I could really highlight at the end of my day and say, "Oh, of course I had this go wrong and I had that go wrong." I mean, there were more days than I can count that I had to start my day puking into a trash can, but those are the moments I could stand out and say, "Wow, here's the things I'm grateful for." I think that's something none of us do enough, but just listing, 5 things here. End of the day, I was grateful for this, or I got this phone call from this person, or here's something that went right, and just listing those things, I think, makes a huge difference in our attitudes.
Yes, it does. Hi, I'm Mark Thomas, founder and CEO of Current Tech Solutions and Cyber Guardians. If you or someone you know could benefit from our cutting-edge IT and cybersecurity services, we'd love to help. Our expertise in securing your business with AI precision ensures that you're protected and empowered to thrive. Reach out to us today to learn how we can secure and elevate your business.